Welcome to Pain in the Grass, the official Lawn Pride podcast, where we dig deep into the real problems hiding in your yard. From weeds to grubs to mystery brown spots, we've got the dirt. Let's grow better together.
You know that universal feeling of springtime triumph?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right? Like you spend months just, I don't know, surviving the grueling cold,
Right.
looking out at the dormancy, the gray skies, all that endless mud in the yard.
Exactly.
And then finally the temperatures warm up. The grass starts to actually green up. You step outside feeling totally victorious, only to be like ambushed by this sudden, ugly, spreading brown ring right in the middle of your otherwise perfect yard.
It is definitely a frustrating moment. I mean, you think you've made it to the finish line of winter, and then suddenly the turf starts failing just as you're, bringing out the patio furniture.
Exactly. So, welcome to our deep dive. Today, we are investigating a silent overnight threat that damages lawns every spring. Our material for this conversation comes from the experts at Lawn Pride of North Charlotte.
Right.
And our mission today is to decode this whole phenomenon of spring lawn fungus. We want to figure out why our immediate, very human instincts to fix it usually just make things worse and learn the actual science of stopping it before it ever starts.
Which is so important.
Yeah. Okay, let's unpack this. It's like surviving a grueling winter marathon only to get tripped up by a microscopic hurdle right at the spring finish line.
That is a great way to put it. It's an incredibly common hurdle, actually. And establishing the stakes right up front is crucial here. Fungus is, it's one of the most destructive yet completely underestimated threats to lawns.
Especially around here, right?
Oh, absolutely. Particularly in the Charlotte and Lake Norman area, people often assume a brown spot is bugs or the heat or just, a bad patch of dirt.
Right, they blame the dog.
Exactly. They blame the dog. But if you actually understand the biology at play, this threat is entirely preventable.
Okay, so to understand the threat, we really have to understand the environment first. Like, why does this happen right as the weather gets nice? And why are certain lawns seemingly targeted while others are, completely fine?
Well, it's not so much about being targeted as it is about the fungus finding its perfect incubation window. Fungal diseases, they don't really need much of an invitation. They just need a very specific, sustained combination of heat, humidity, and moisture. And if you look at the climate in the Charlotte metro area from, say, May through early June,
Oh, yeah?
it delivers all three of those variables in massive abundance.
We're talking daytime temperatures consistently climbing up into the 80s.
Right.
But then the nights stay warm and incredibly humid.
Yeah, and the nighttime variables are really the key driver here. It's not just the humidity, though. You have to factor in the afternoon thunderstorms that regularly roll through the Lake Norman area.
Oh, the pop-up storms?
Exactly. Those leave the grass blades wet for hours. Then you add in the morning dew that lingers well into mid-morning. What you have is an environment where the grass canopy essentially never dries out.
Wow.
And here's the thing that surprises most people. These fungal pathogens aren't blowing in on the wind from somewhere else.
Wait, they aren't?
No, not usually.
Because I always pictured, like, spores blowing over from a neighbor's yard or something.
I mean, some do travel that way, sure, but the primary instigators have likely been sitting completely dormant in your soil all winter long.
Really? Just waiting.
Yeah, fungi have these fascinating survival mechanisms. They form these hardened microscopic masses in the soil or, in dead plant debris.
Okay.
They basically hibernate. They just ignore the freezing temperatures, waiting for the soil temperature to hit a specific threshold combined with that lingering moisture we talked about. Once the conditions are right, they wake up.
And when they wake up, they are looking for a vulnerable host. The data from Lawn Pride of North Charlotte points out that not all grasses are equally vulnerable.
Right. That's a huge point.
Because in the Piedmont region, tall fescue is everywhere. People love it because it's durable and it handles shade really well. But tall fescue is fundamentally a cool season grass.
Which becomes a massive physiological disadvantage in this specific scenario because it's a cool season grass. It evolved to thrive in the spring and fall. The moment those daytime temperatures cross that 80-degree Fahrenheit threshold, the fescue's internal metabolism starts to really struggle.
How so? Because, if it's warm and sunny, shouldn't a plant be happy?
You would think so, yeah. But the mechanism is actually quite stressful for the plant. At those higher temperatures, a cool season grass begins to respire, or burn energy, faster than it can produce energy through photosynthesis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it is literally exhausting itself just trying to survive the heat. And just like in humans, when a living organism is burning all its energy just to stay regulated, its immune response drops dramatically. The structural integrity of its cell walls actually weakens.
So what you're saying is the exact weather that makes us want to be outside, the warmth, the humidity, the transition to summer, is basically acting as a five-star resort for dormant disease.
Yes,
Right at the exact moment the grass is losing its physical ability to fight back.
exactly. What's fascinating here is the sheer biological irony of it all. The conditions that optimize the environment for the natural predator are the exact same conditions that trigger the host plant's internal stress response.
That is wild.
It is. The grass's immune system is plummeting just as the pathogen's attacking capabilities are peaking.
Now, to be fair, I know warm season grasses like Bermuda grass and zoysia,
Mhm.
which, you see a lot in full sun properties around Lake Norman, are much more heat tolerant. Do they just get a free pass here?
Well, they definitely have a structural advantage in the heat, but no, they aren't completely immune.
Okay.
They can still get hit by diseases like dollar spot and large patch, particularly if they are in shaded, consistently wet areas of the yard where the microclimate mimics that high humidity incubator.
Gotcha.
But if you have tall fescue, you are undoubtedly in the highest risk category during that late spring transition.
Okay, so the fescue's immune system is down, its cells are weakened, the climate is essentially a sauna, and the dormant spores are waking up.
A perfect storm.
Right. Who exactly is invading the yard? Let's talk about the specific pathogens.
So, in this region, pathology points to two primary villains for fescue lawns. The first, and by far the most destructive, is brown patch, which is caused by a fungus called Rhizoctonia solani.
Rhizoctonia solani.
Yep. It is the #1 fungal killer of fescue in the southeast. It becomes highly active the moment temperatures sit in that 70 to 90 degree window with heavy moisture.
And it creates these massive, circular or irregular brown patches that can literally grow several feet in diameter in a matter of days.
It's incredibly fast.
It has a very classic visual signature, right? Like a dark, water-soaked ring right on the outer edge of the dying grass.
Yeah, that water-soaked ring is the active infection front. What you're seeing there isn't just wet grass. You are looking at cellular destruction in real time.
Gross.
It is. The fungus is actively releasing enzymes that dissolve the pectin between the grass cells. It basically melts the plant tissue so it can absorb the nutrients.
It melts the grass.
Essentially, yes, which is why it looks dark and waterlogged. The second villain is gray leaf spot, caused by Pericularia gricia. This one operates slightly differently.
Okay, how so?
Well, it creates these tiny diamond-shaped lesions on the individual grass blades, eventually giving the entire lawn this scorched, almost bleached-out look.
Man, here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because of the way they operate, these fungi act a bit like microscopic vampires.
I like that analogy.
Right. The destruction doesn't happen while you're watching in the middle of the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
They do almost all of their damage in the dark, under the cover of that heavy morning dew. By the time you walk outside with your coffee, they've already attacked, leaving these rings behind.
I'd actually take that vampire analogy a step further to explain the mechanics. It's not just that they prefer the dark. They mechanically require the moisture layer provided by the nighttime dew.
Well, they need the water to move.
Exactly. The fungal mycelium, the actual thread-like body of the fungus, needs a film of water to move from blade to blade. It uses the dew as a transit system.
That is terrifying.
That's why a patch can expand by several feet in just a few days. The pathogen is moving rapidly through the moisture layer while the plant is just, too stressed to mount any biochemical defense.
Which brings us to what might be the most tragic part of this whole story. The misidentification trap.
Oh, yes. This is where it all goes wrong.
Because when humans wake up, look out at their yard, and see these sudden brown, dying patches, our first instinct is usually to intervene. And the way we intervene is practically a death sentence for the lawn.
We constantly see homeowners trying to fix this with the wrong tools. A homeowner looks at a brown patch of grass in May or June, and their brain immediately attributes it to the obvious visible factors.
Like the heat.
Right. The weather's getting hot, so they think, oh, the grass is drought stressed, or that's a heat spot. Or they look for a physical cause, maybe blaming the dog, or assuming underground grubs are eating the roots.
So what does this all mean for the listener standing in their yard with a hose? Because if I see brown grass, my brain screams thirsty. We naturally want to give it a drink. Are we essentially watering the fungus instead of the grass?
This raises an important question about how human intuition frequently fails us in biological systems. By watering that brown patch, particularly if you are doing it in the evening, you are literally giving the fungus the exact transport mechanism it needs to multiply.
Oh, man.
Remember the underlying mechanism we talked about. The fungus needs a film of water to travel. You are taking an actively spreading pathogen and giving it a massive transit network to swim to the next healthy grass blade.
There's a really crucial diagnostic tip we should highlight here to help listeners tell the difference.
Yes, please.
If you are in a stretch of warm, humid weather and you see brown patches, you need to observe them critically before you grab the hose. If those patches are growing and expanding outwards rather than just staying static, there's a very high probability you are dealing with disease, not drought. A drought spot generally thins out an entire area or stays confined to a specific shallow soil spot. It doesn't rapidly creep across the lawn in a perfect expanding circle over 3 days.
That's the perfect way to differentiate them. We have to stop reacting emotionally to brain grass and start looking at the mechanics of how the damage is spreading.
Right.
Which means we need to shift away from our reactionary habits like panic watering and start implementing proactive cultural practices to alter the environment.
All right, let's talk defense. If our intuition to just dump water on the problem is wrong, how do we actually alter the environment to protect the grass? What does the science say we should do?
It requires a multi-layered approach, starting with how you handle irrigation. This is the single most important cultural practice you can adopt. You have to restrict your watering to the early morning hours, ideally finishing up before 10 a.m.
Because that allows the grass to naturally dry out in the sun during the day. If you set your sprinklers to run in the evening or at night, which a lot of people do because they think they're saving water from evaporating, you are leaving those grass blades soaking wet for 8 or 10 hours in the dark. You're artificially extending that dew period and creating the perfect fungal transit system.
And beyond the timing, the volume matters immensely. You want to do deep, infrequent watering. If you run the sprinklers for 10 minutes every single day, you keep the surface layer of the soil permanently damp.
Which the fungus loves.
Right. Deep watering, say running them longer but only a couple of times a week, encourages the grass roots to dive deeper down into the soil in search of moisture while allowing the topsoil surface to dry out completely. A dry surface is highly inhospitable to fungal spores trying to germinate.
So we control the moisture. But it's not just the water making the grass vulnerable, it's also what we feed it. Let's talk about the danger of over-fertilizing in late spring.
This is a huge one.
To me, this is like dumping a bunch of high-nitrogen fertilizer on the lawn and essentially feeding the grass junk food. It pushes this incredibly rapid, lush, bright green growth. But because it grows so fast, the cellular walls of the grass are physically weak. It looks great from the street, but it's totally soft.
The underlying cellular biology of that junk food analogy is spot on. When you push massive amounts of synthetic nitrogen into a plant, it forces rapid cellular division.
Okay.
The grass blades stretch quickly, but the plant doesn't have the time or the secondary nutrients to fortify those new cell walls with lignin. And lignin is the compound that gives plant cells their rigidity and strength.
So it's basically growing too fast for its own good.
Exactly. So you end up with thin, watery cell walls. When Rhizoctonia solani releases those dissolving enzymes we talked about earlier, it punches right through that soft tissue with almost zero resistance.
Unbelievable. Okay, so we have the water controlled and we've stopped feeding it junk food. What about the physical structure of the lawn? How we cut it must play a role.
Oh, it does. The physical canopy of the grass is your next line of defense. You need to keep fescue mowed at a height of 3.5 to 4 inches during these warm months.
3.5 to 4 inches.
Yes. And the golden rule here is to never, ever scalp it and never remove more than 1/3 of the grass blade in a single mow.
I see people cutting their grass super short in the summer so they don't have to mow as often.
Mm-hmm.
But scalping it removes the lawn's natural canopy buffer, right? It exposes the crown of the plant to the baking sun.
It does, which triggers massive heat stress.
Uh,
But from a disease perspective, maintaining a taller canopy actually helps regulate the soil temperature.
Oh, that makes sense.
Furthermore, when you scalp the grass, you open up the lower canopy, allowing splashing rain or irrigation to easily bounce fungal spores straight from the soil directly onto the freshly cut open wounds on the grass blades.
Which is basically handing the fungus a VIP pass into the plant's vascular system.
Pretty much.
Okay, what about the environment down at the soil level? We know shaded, low-lying areas that stay wet are ground zero for outbreaks.
That comes down to air circulation and drainage. If you look at the life cycle of a lawn, dead organic matter naturally builds up on the soil surface. We call this thatch.
Right, thatch.
If that thatch layer gets too thick, it acts exactly like a dense sponge. It traps moisture at the surface and creates a humid, dark microenvironment that harbors those dormant, overwintering pathogens year-round.
So how do you fix that?
Doing a core aeration. That's when you pull physical plugs of soil out of the ground. It breaks up that thatch layer, improves drainage, and literally lets the soil breathe.
So we've adjusted the watering, the feeding, the mowing, and the soil drainage. But sometimes the weather is just relentless.
It really is.
For lawns that are truly high risk, especially fescue in those shaded, low areas near the lake, the final step is chemical prevention, applying a preventative fungicide before the symptoms ever appear.
When you have highly susceptible turf in a high disease pressure climate, preventative fungicide is the gold standard. A lot of people wait until they see the brown rings to go buy a spray.
Right, they try to cure it.
But curative treatments, treating the grass after it turns brown, are biologically just playing catch-up.
Because once the tissue is melted by those enzymes, it's gone. A fungicide can stop the remaining active spores from moving to the next blade, but it cannot bring dead, dissolved turf back to life.
Exactly.
Prevention cuts the fungus off at the pass, shutting down the spores before they can even germinate.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, think about what these steps are actually doing in concert. By adjusting a mower blade height, setting an irrigation timer to morning, restricting nitrogen inputs, and applying targeted preventatives, you are not just maintaining a lawn.
What are you doing?
You are mechanically, biologically, and physically altering the microenvironment of your yard. You are actively engineering a habitat that denies the fungus the specific parameters it requires to survive.
But let's be real for a second. Balancing all of that, knowing the exact cellular strength of the grass, managing soil drainage, calculating the specific local humidity levels, timing the preventative fungicides precisely before the soil temperature hits the danger zone, that is an incredibly complex scientific balancing act for someone just trying to enjoy their weekend.
It really is. It is extremely difficult for a homeowner to track all of those variables perfectly, which is why professional intervention often shifts from a luxury to a scientific necessity in these climates.
And that really highlights the local advantage outlined by Lawn Pride of North Charlotte. They take the guesswork out of the equation because they aren't just reacting to dead grass, they are managing the environment proactively.
That's the critical difference. Managing lawn disease isn't just about walking around and spraying chemicals from a truck. It requires a hyper-local understanding of environmental pathology.
Right.
A successful approach relies on proactive seasonal monitoring of high-risk properties, right as that warm, humid season approaches.
They use targeted preventative fungicides that are timed perfectly to the Charlotte area's specific disease pressure window. And they customize the fertilization so the lawn gets fed the right micronutrients without pushing that vulnerable, watery junk food growth that invites infection.
It really means the technicians have to act more like local lawn epidemiologists than traditional landscapers. They are tracking weather patterns and historical data to predict outbreaks before they happen.
Because knowing the broad textbook science of a fungus is one thing, but knowing exactly what 3 straight days of 85 degrees Charlotte humidity looks like on the ground, or understanding how the moisture behaves in the unique microclimates of specific neighborhoods nestled right up against Lake Norman.
That hyperlocal knowledge is what actually wins the battle. They know exactly where the disease is going to hit hardest before the soil temperature even wakes the spores up.
That's amazing.
And the crucial benefit here is having an expert handle the diagnosis. Because as we discussed, treating the wrong problem mechanically makes things worse.
Yeah, the watering trap.
Exactly. If a homeowner misdiagnoses fungus as drought, applies water, and adds synthetic nitrogen to try and green it up, they will functionally destroy the lawn in a matter of days. Having a professional step in prevents that compounding error.
So to summarize our journey today, we started by uncovering the stealthy, dormant nature of spring lawn fungus, microscopic pathogens that hibernate in your soil all winter, just waiting for the fescue to become metabolically stressed by the 80-degree heat and humidity.
The invisible enemy.
We expose the danger of our own human intuition, how our instinct to water a dying brown patch is essentially handing a high-speed transit system to the enemy. And we laid out the tactical defense, shifting our irrigation to the morning, fortifying the plant cells by avoiding late spring nitrogen spikes, preserving the canopy by mowing high, improving drainage, and utilizing preventative fungicides before the damage is done.
It really requires a complete paradigm shift in how you view the biological system of your yard during that critical spring transition.
So we have to ask you, the listener, to take a hard look at your own backyard habits this week. Are you guilty of setting the sprinklers to run at night just because it's convenient? Or perhaps scalping the fescue just a little too low on the weekends to save yourself a future mow?
Those seemingly small mechanical actions have massive biological consequences for the health of the plant. And, I'd like to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Okay.
We tend to look out our windows and view our grass as this static, predictable green carpet. But in reality, the soil beneath your feet is a highly complex, totally invisible ecosystem.
Right.
It is a constant shifting interaction between weather, cellular biology, and human intervention. And if millions of fungal spores are just sitting there right now, silently hibernating, waiting for the precise combination of moisture and heat to wake up and alter that ecosystem, well, it begs the question.
That's that.
What other microscopic forces are lying dormant in the soil around your home right now, just waiting for the exact right drop in temperature or shift in the wind to wake up?
A microscopic hurdle, right at the finish line.
Thank you for listening to the Pain in the Grass podcast, sponsored by Lawn Pride of North Charlotte, Huntersville, your go-to name in turf care for homeowners and businesses seeking beauty, quality, and reliability, powered by family and fueled by passion. Until next time, make sure to take care of that pain in the grass.